Okay, there's no time like the present, right? Might as well jump right into it here on the Panther-Lair Show. This week, this election night podcast, of course, recorded on a Tuesday night. We do it every week at 8:30 on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. We record the podcast as a live stream on our YouTube channel, and we do it every week. We do it every week at 8:30 on Tuesday nights. This is the plan. This is our schedule. This is what we've fallen into. We've been doing this since February or sometime when we started doing these live stream podcasts. I forget when. I think it was in February. And we've been doing it since then. And really debated about doing it this week, whether or not we go ahead and do it on Tuesday night, as we've been doing it, like I say, for the last 9 months. I mean, for an entire pregnancy, we've been doing this podcast on Tuesday nights at 8:30. So I said, should we move it? Should we do it differently this week? Should we do it on Monday? Should we do it on Wednesday? I mean, it's the election night. Are people going to be interested in talking about Pitt? What is going to be, what kind of audience we're going to draw? Am I going to be able to focus? And, I mean, you can't look around. You can't see here in the Panther-Lair studios. I don't have any televisions on down here. I don't have any, there's another computer in this room. I don't have it turned on. I don't even have my phone on. It just activated because I picked it up. But I'm not looking at these things right now because as I thought about it, we've all been focused on this election forever and a day. I mean, we've been focused on this election for 4 years now, right? We've been looking ahead to November 3rd, 2020. And the moment is here. The time is right. As soon as I finish this podcast, I'm going to go watch the election results and the election coverage coming in. But for now, for this hour, we're just going to sit back and talk about Pitt. And it's a little bit of a distraction. I don't expect you to be only doing this. I totally understand if you've got this podcast, this live stream going and you're watching the election coverage at the same time. And, there's an audience for the podcast itself that's going to listen to this thing when we release it as an audio podcast, on Wednesday. They're going to listen to it through the week. People out there, and I appreciate, everyone who listens to the podcast. We see the downloads, we see the listens, and we appreciate it, So it's not just the live stream. So I said, you know what, screw it. We're going to do this thing. We're going to do it on Tuesday night. It's going to give me a distraction for an hour. It can maybe give you a distraction for an hour where we're not going to think about what is happening in Florida or North Carolina or Virginia or any of these other places or Texas. You know what? We'll let a higher percentage be reporting by the time we're done talking about Pitt, and we'll see where things stand. So here we are. Tuesday night, November 3rd, 2020. We all need a beer. I've got one. Didn't get a chance to open it yet. It's the RX Pumpkin Ale. I've been drinking this for a while. I love it. I'm a big fan of pumpkin ales when the time is right. When it's the fall, I really appreciate them, enjoy them. And I really appreciate RX making a gluten-free pumpkin ale. And this is not a sponsored bit. I just poured some out. Made a mess on the table. Whoops. But this is not a sponsored bit. RX doesn't hook us up or anything. I wish they would. That'd be awesome. But if you are looking for a gluten-free beer option, I mean, RX is out on 65 in Emsworth. They got a lot of great beers out there. And I found some good gluten-free beers around. The more that I've kind of looked into it, I've found some good gluten-free options. And RX definitely has some really good ones locally. And like I say, a pumpkin ale. And I thought this was going to be the kind of thing once I stopped including gluten in my diet, once I had to start cutting gluten out of my diet, I thought this was going to be the kind of thing I just wouldn't be able to find anymore. I wouldn't have pumpkin beers anymore. But RX has it going on, and it's really good. So, highly recommend that. I also have to give a quick shout out to Home Field Apparel. You can probably see the shirt I'm wearing. I'll stand up. It's an excellent shirt with Rock, Pittsburgh Panthers. It's a very sweet shirt. What you can't see is how soft it is, how comfortable it is. Home Field Apparel makes really high quality products. And I mean, that's the thing it has to start with. You can make sweet designs. And I bought t-shirts from companies that make great designs. And I think, wow, that's such a sweet shirt. That's awesome. And then I wear it once and I wash it once and the thing doesn't fit anymore. It's not comfortable anymore. It loses its shape. It's ill-fitting. That's not the case with Home Field. Their shirts are super soft. I have 2 t-shirts and a sweatshirt, and they're awesome. They're super comfortable. They have great designs. I mean, it's everything you could want in a t-shirt, really. So homefieldapparel.com is the website to go to. They've got a great Pitt collection, some really awesome designs. I've got a couple of their Pitt shirts. I've also got a Hawaii Rainbow Warrior sweatshirt, which is great. I've been wearing it all the time. It's super soft. If it was a little bit chillier tonight, I'd probably have that on. I'd be showing that off. Homefieldapparel.com. Go check them out. They run specials all the time. They run promos all the time. And even if you pay full price, it's worth it because this is high quality gear and they have a great Pitt collection. They have a great college sports collection. So, I mean, whoever you're looking for, if you're looking for something off the wall, they've got some D2 schools and things like that. And if you're looking for your favorite team, they've got that too. And if you're looking to adopt a new favorite team, they've probably got it. They've got deals with a lot of schools across the country. So definitely go check it out at homefieldapparel.com. You can check out all the sweet Pitt gear about that's out there. All right, so let's jump into Pitt football, Pitt sports. What's going on? I'm gonna close the Twitter window here on my laptop. I just realized as I clicked over to the YouTube stream to check out who was jumping in to the chat and getting in on the live stream, because that's the fun thing about this live stream that we do on Tuesday nights when we record the podcast at 8:30 every Tuesday. You know, I mean, it's a video. It creates extra content, and video content is cool, and it's sort of killing two birds with one stone. I'm putting out video content and also creating a podcast at the same time. You know, like that's one part of it. But another big advantage of doing this, and one thing I really enjoy, is the interactive part. You know, I mean, you can get into the chat and interact, put out questions and comments, and we can have a little conversation about Pitt sports. You know what I mean? That's, I think some of the fun is that we can have a little back and forth, as opposed to when, I first started doing the podcast, it was just me sitting down, talking into a microphone. And then, I just put it out there and you listen to it and maybe you had a reaction, maybe you tweet at me or post on the message boards or something like that. But it was delayed and it wasn't really interactive. But the live chat function during the YouTube live streams lets it be interactive, and you can use the super chat function down there. If you look at the bottom of the screen beneath the say something line, right next to the emoji, you can click that box with the $ sign in it if you want to throw a couple bucks to support the podcast, and then it's a super chatter. You become a super chatter and your comment gets highlighted, and we definitely make sure we get to it, because sometimes I don't get to everyone's questions and comments. You'll definitely get your stuff read and mentioned if you join as a super chatter there. We definitely appreciate those guys, and see a lot of the usuals filtering in. And right off the bat, I can see the questions are rolling in about Paris Ford. And this is the big news for Pitt this week. The Panthers coming off an off week. I mean, we could set the scene here, but you know what the scene is. They're on a 4-game losing streak. They're 3-4 overall. They're 2-4 in the ACC. And what should have been a really promising season, what was a really promising season, it's taken a not just a downturn, it's a downward spiral. And what I've said a few times, and I'll talk more about this in a little bit, is, they're past the point of salvaging this season, and keeping it from being a disappointment. This season is a disappointment. Finishing this year with 4 losses at a minimum is a disappointment, and they're not going to do any better than 4 losses. And with Clemson sitting at the end of the regular season, they're probably going to have 5 losses. So, I mean, you're looking at, realistically, at best, a 6-5 season. That's disappointing when this team should have been 8-9 wins is really where they should have been, even on this shortened COVID schedule of 11 games. So the season is a disappointment. You're not going to get out of that. What you really are working toward now is trying to avoid having the season become an outright disaster. And when it rains, it pours. So here they are in the off week. They didn't have an opportunity to lose a game this past weekend, and instead they lost one of their best players. When Paris Ford didn't announce, it was reported, and Pat Narduzzi then confirmed it, that Paris Ford had, I mean, we're using the phrase opt out, but that's not what this is. He left the team. Okay. And, quit has a negative connotation. You say quit, it sounds like he gave up and walked away. But I mean, I don't know how you define quit in a way that doesn't apply to somebody who is who made the decision that Paris Ford did. I mean, he chose to leave the team. After 7 games, with 4 games in the regular season remaining, he chose to leave the team. And it is what it is. And you see a lot of guys going into the transfer portal right now. A lot of guys who are leaving their teams. They're quitting their current teams to go into the transfer portal and go play someplace else. Now, that's not what Paris Ford is doing. Paris Ford is leaving Pitt to focus on his future, which I guess is the NFL. And I think it was Pittsburgh Sports Now, Alan Saunders, those guys reported, I believe they said that it was due to concerns about rising COVID cases. I mean, I'm sorry, but I don't put a whole lot of credence in that. I think you look at this situation now where you're leaving 7 games into the season. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And some people have said, well, Paris Ford is probably sitting back and saying, why would I risk injury for a 3-4 team? Okay, maybe that might be valid, but I guess I would question, how would an NFL team respond to that? You know what I mean? If an NFL team brings any player in to their pre-draft interviews and sits them down and says, so you left your team after 7 games in an 11-game season. Why did you do that? What made you leave? What were the circumstances surrounding that? And if that player says, well, we were 3-4, and I don't really want to risk injury. I don't know. I'm not a football guy. You know what I mean? I'm not a coach. I've never been a coach or anything like that. I just don't know how that would go over. You know what I mean? Like, is an NFL coach or an NFL GM really going to sit back and say, yeah, that's a good point? Because I'm pretty sure in the back of their minds, what they're going to be thinking is, well, what if we have a bad season? You're going to leave us too? You're going to walk out on us? You're going to sit out the rest of the year for us too? So I think that's a little bit concerning. The reasoning why. Because I don't think it has to do with COVID numbers. And if it is about being concerned about injury while playing on a losing team, a team with a losing record, I mean, I think that's something of a red flag. Now, I think first things first with Paris Ford. I mean, we kind of put we jumped ahead here talking about reasons for leaving and that kind of thing. I guess I was more interested in the semantics of it because there's been a debate. Oh, is it opting out or is it leaving the team or is it quitting or it left the team. Paris Ford left the team. I think we can use that phrase because that's what happened. That's what has happened. Opt out is it's semantics, and those semantics probably don't apply here. He left the team. But again, we're getting ahead of ourselves because when you start just with the impact of Paris Ford leaving the team, it's not a positive. It's not a good thing when you lose one of the best players on your team. And Paris Ford was one of the best players on the team. He was one of the most productive. He was the team's leading tackler last year. He was a leading tackler this year. 142 tackles over the last 20 games, all of last season and then 7 games this year. 6 interceptions, 14 pass breakups, 3 forced fumbles. He started 18 out of the last 20 games, and the only 2 that he didn't start were because he got disqualified for targeting in the previous game in the second half. Super productive player, an exciting player, an explosive player, an impactful player. The kind of player that you watch when he's on the field because anything can happen on any given play. He can make a big play any snap. And he often did make a big play on any snap. I mean, he was all over the field. He had great instincts that he relied on. And he had a nose for the ball. And he had an appetite for laying big hits. And he certainly had a lot of athleticism. And you look at some of the plays he made. Was it the Boston College? He broke up a pass in the end zone that would have been a touch. That could have been a touchdown. He diving pass breakup. And another one, obviously he had the interception against Miami. Did he have a second play? Was it the Miami game or the Boston College game where he was diving out of bounds and nearly had an interception there? I mean, just he made plays that not a lot of guys on the team could make. Maybe no other guys on the team could make. He was a special player. He was a special talent. And I don't think there's any question about that. I think he has, sort of at the most basic level, first-round talent. I believe that. I think he has NFL talent and NFL potential. But he's also got some things he needs to work on. And this is not something we're talking about just now in the wake of him leaving the team. This is not trying to pile on the kid or talk negative about him in the wake of him leaving the team. This is things. These are things we talked about before the season. You know what I mean? Over the summer when we would break down the team, or we would talk about the safeties, or we were talking about the defense, or we were talking about Paris Ford, one of the things we said was that he needs to be more responsible in his assignments. The coaches need to believe they can trust him on the field to do what he's supposed to do. And some of these instances in the last two games, the Miami game and the Notre Dame game, where Paris Ford came out of the game or was taken out of the game in the third quarter against Notre Dame and late in the fourth quarter against Miami, some of it was due to him not executing his assignments. And there have been plays that have been given up over the last 2 years when he didn't execute his assignments. And there's something to be said for a player who has great instincts. And I think there are people who tell you that, look, if a guy has great instincts, you let him play. You don't overcoach him. And I understand that. I do. But there isn't a coach in the world who won't tell you, hey, look, we've got a defensive scheme here. We've got a system. And it relies on all 11 players doing their jobs. Because even the great ones, the ones who really did improvise and freelance, were still working within a system to some extent. Dick LeBeau designed a defense. And yes, he let Troy Polamalu do a lot of different things. But it still worked within the system. And he still coached Troy Polamalu on what he needed to do. Because if Troy Polamalu freelanced too much or he put himself out of position, you're going to give up a big play. And I think Paris Ford wants to be that kind of player who can move around and use his instincts to make plays. And that's great. And if you have that kind of player, you should use that kind of player and you should let him make his plays. But he also has to function within. Okay. I apologize if something went right. Sorry, I got a message on my computer saying there was an issue with the connection. I hope there's nothing going. I hope you guys are still with me here. Let me see. Okay, I think we're good. I apologize for the disruption there, but if it got disconnected, I apologize. Football, like I said, I mean, they talk about football being the ultimate team game because you have 11 guys on the field and their jobs are all intertwined. I mean, especially on defense, they all have to be doing their jobs or else, there are going to be gaps and there are going to be vulnerabilities. And so a player like Paris Ford is a great player and you want to allow his instincts to flourish. You want to allow him to make big plays, based on those instincts. But he also has to work within the defense, and that's going to be the case in the NFL too, and if it was an issue at Pitt, and I think it was at times, it's going to be an issue in the NFL, and you can talk about overcoaching or not using him properly and this kind of thing, but NFL coaches I think are going to expect him to do his assignments, and play, assignment football and fill his role on the field. And if he doesn't, he's going to lose playing time, kind of like he did at Pitt at certain points. And look, I mean, you also can't, I think when you talk about Paris Ford, you can't deny the fact or ignore the fact that there have been some off-field sort of concerns. From academic issues keeping him from enrolling on time when he was a freshman to, kind of a curious absence from the Sun Bowl in 2018 to, a bit of a Cuban Missile Crisis type of situation over the summer where it looked like he might be leaving the team, and probably other instances that never really became public. And I mean, I think even this departure from the team stemmed at least in part from a disagreement with the coaches, maybe stemming from, the situation in the Notre Dame game, although I think it's probably just off-field disagreements with the coaches. I think probably precipitated this decision to ultimately leave the team. These are going to be red flags that Paris Ford is going to have to deal with, and he's going to have to overcome. And he can go and test great, and prove, show the NFL teams what he can do physically, but I think he's going to have to win it in the interviews and show maturity and show growth and show an understanding of maybe where he did and did not excel at Pitt and how he's going to improve on some of those areas where he struggled. I don't know if Pitt's coaching staff did the best job with him all throughout his career. I think the move to cornerback in 2018 was ill-advised. Ostensibly, that move was made as a way to get him on the field sooner because I think quite frankly, there's less of the defense to master at corner. You still have to know your job and you still have to understand all the calls and checks and things like that. But I think there's more to sort of have knowledge of at safety than there is at corner. And so I think the thought was, well, he's an outstanding athlete. He's one of the best athletes on the team. This will get him on the field. Well, it didn't work. He didn't play well at corner. It wasn't a good fit for him, and it didn't. Like I say, it didn't work. So they finally moved him back to safety, and he excelled in 2019. He was great. 97 tackles, 3 picks, 11 pass breakups, 3 forced fumbles. He was great. All ACC, first team, deservedly so. Got some All-America nods, deservedly so. It's interesting though. You look at Pro Football Focus. Grades from Pro Football Focus aren't all that great for Paris Ford, even in 2019 and this year. Not ranked among the top 5 safeties in the country. Fairly or unfairly, and you can say what you want about Pro Football Focus, and it's fine. I don't entirely agree with all their grades either, but it's interesting that perspective is out there. And I think sometimes, you and I, we watch these games and we see these guys on the field and we see the interceptions, we see the big hits, and we see these exciting plays, and we think this guy is incredible. And I've said for the better part of the last 2 years, he's one of the most exciting players I've seen on the field at Pitt in the 15 years I've covered this team. You're talking about a select group of guys who are just as exciting to watch as this guy was. You're talking about a LaShawn McCoy or a Tyler Boyd level excitement when every time he's on the field, boy, what's going to happen here? I think he can do something great. But is everything still here? I apologize if you're, I think things are working, but I don't know. I'm seeing weird messages from my, here from our software programs. And I apologize if we're having another problem. This is frustrating, but it's election night. Everybody's firing up the Wi-Fi. Let's get to some comments and questions here. Oh, look, Paris Ford, I guess my final thoughts are this. I think he's a great kid. I think he could stand to add a little more maturity, grow up a little bit, take his coaching a little bit more to heart, understand that he can learn a lot about the game, understand that he can be even better than he is with the right coaching, and maybe he would contend that he needs the right coaching. Maybe that he would contend that that's the operative phrase. I think it's disappointing to see him go. I would have liked to have seen him finish out his career at Pitt, or at least this season at Pitt, but it's not my decision. It's not my money, as they say. And it's not my, it's his decision to make. Like, he was an outstanding player at Pitt, an exciting player at Pitt, who probably could have been even better than he was. But he's gonna have some things he'll have to address with the NFL. When he talks to NFL GMs and he talks to NFL coaches, he's gonna have to answer some of the questions that we're bringing up here. He's gonna have to answer some of these things about some of these potential red flags and say, hopefully for him, he answers them to the satisfaction of the GMs and coaches. All right, let's see here. Matt Sable says, let's start us off here. Matt Sable says, this bye week and the losing streak have made me lose all enthusiasm for this team. I hear you, Matt. It's hard. Look, when you lose games, particularly the way Pitt's been losing them, where they're struggling to score, and then they go into the off week on a 4-game losing streak with the 4th loss being a 40-point blowout. Yeah, that can be a bit challenging. That can do a lot to fan morale. I think it probably does a lot to team morale. That can be tough to overcome. I guess I would say this, there's still 4 games left. they're going to have opportunities to win games. I think this Saturday presents a great opportunity right off the bat. Florida State's not good. They've won 2 games all season. They beat Jacksonville State. They upset North Carolina in a game where, I think North Carolina really could have won it with they had a couple drop passes and things like that in the second half. This Florida State team, though, they've got athletes. They're not a good team, though. Not right now, especially on defense. Florida State's defense ranks in the bottom of the ACC in just about every major category. I mean, you look at total defense, scoring defense, rush defense, pass defense. It's all, 14th or 15th in the conference, and this is a 15-team league. So you're really at the bottom. You're talking about a defense that is, one of the worst in the ACC, if not the worst in the ACC. They're not great against the run. They're not great against the pass. This should be a game where Pitt can have some success. I'm not going to predict that they'll have success running the ball because I don't know if this team can have success running the ball, but they should be able to throw it. It's going to be a big question mark of whether or not Kenny Pickett plays. I don't think that decision is made. I don't think it's going to be made until Saturday, to be honest with you, one way or the other. I think it will be a game-time decision. I would expect him to travel. This is my expectation right now on Tuesday night. I would expect him to travel, and I would expect him to go through warm-ups and see how he's able to move around. I mean, they have a couple more days of practice this week, and you'll see what happens then. But I don't know what's going to happen with Kenny Pickett. If it's not him, I would assume it's Joey Yellen. And, can Joey Yellen be better than he was against Notre Dame? Can he be more like he was against Florida State than he was against Notre Dame? I think he'll have a chance because I don't think Florida State's defense is as good as Notre Dame's was. I don't think it's as good as Miami's was. And I thought he played pretty well against Miami. So, Pitt should have a good chance to win this game. They should be able to put up points and score. Florida State, not a great passing team. Jordan Travis, not a great passing quarterback, but he's a pretty good running quarterback. And they're a pretty good running team. Pitt's going to have to stop the run. It's really the one thing that Florida State does well. And, for whatever you want to say about Pitt and whatever you want to say about Pat Narduzzi's emphasis on stopping the run, I mean, it is one thing they're still pretty good at. Notre Dame was a great running team, and Pitt kept them under wraps. They gave up 100 yards, but it was like on a lot of carries, 40 or 50 carries. So, I think Pitt can still stop the run, and that's what Florida State is going to want to do. And so I think that should work for the Panthers' favor. This is a game they can win. This is a game, quite frankly, maybe they should win. I don't even know what the betting line is. It's probably pretty close, maybe a few points for Florida State because, neither one of these teams look great right now. But this is a team that Pitt should be able to beat, and Georgia Tech next week is the same way. And so, Matt, I understand losing enthusiasm for the team, but they realistically should be able to get a 2-game winning streak going into the home finale against Virginia Tech with a chance to win 3 in a row before they go to Clemson for the regular season finale. I can't count out this team finding a way to put a few wins together and sort some of its issues out, or at least play a little bit better. They're not as bad as they looked against Notre Dame. They might be as bad as they looked against Miami or Boston College or NC State, but they're not as bad as they looked against Notre Dame. If they are as bad as they looked against Miami and Boston College and NC State, that's not good, but it is good enough that you can win games every now and then. You know what I mean? You can still win games. I don't think they're going to go winless the rest of the way. If they do, marron. But they'll win some more games. I believe that, and I think this weekend is one that they should be able to win. So, nothing helps enthusiasm like a win or two, right? Let's see here. More questions and comments and thoughts on Paris Ford. Colin Towle says, any chances Weaver, Jones, and Pickett opt out? I would if I were them. Good for Paris Ford, too. Yeah, no, I don't. Look, I don't know what Rashad Weaver and Patrick Jones and Kenny Pickett are thinking right now. I don't think this is going to be something where you see a bunch of other guys on the team follow suit. Again, I think this is pretty unique to Paris. I think this is unique to his situation and his relationship with the coaches. I think it's unique to how he responds to things and reacts to things. I think this is, I don't want to say isolated because you can't rule out. There's 100 guys on the team. There's 84 other scholarship players. One of them could also decide, I'm done with this. but I don't see it becoming a mass exodus. I don't see a bunch of other guys going. I would be surprised if Rashad Weaver and Patrick Jones and Kenny Pickett decided to follow suit and leave the team. I don't see that happening. That's just me. Let's see. Tim Mason says home field apparel is okay. The fit is a bit small. Yeah, talking about the home field apparel shirts, Tim, their fit is athletic, I think is probably what they say. Just take that into consideration. Maybe order a size up from what you normally would order, or just expect it to come and be small or athletic, however you want to call it. TRR says, how many of the seniors who want to come back in 2021 will Pitt fund scholarships for? That's a great question, TRR. I'm really curious about that because, we talk about how all the seniors can come back. Everybody gets a free year, and seniors won't count against the 85 next year, and all this kind of thing. But there is a question of how many guys would want to come back and how many guys would the program welcome back. I mean, I'm sure Pat Narduzzi would say any senior who wants to come back is free to come back. How many of those guys would want to return? I think is a really interesting question to see what happens. I don't know. I don't know. Pitt's got less than 20 seniors, I think. I think there are definitely guys who would help them next year if they were to return. Guys like Jimmy Morrissey. Obviously, Kenny Pickett would be a big one. Patrick Jones or Rashad Weaver or Keyshawn Camp, if one of those guys wanted to come back, or Damari Mathis wanted to come back. I mean, I think, Damar Hamlin, why not get a 60-year out of Damar Hamlin? Or a Phil Campbell would be great to have back. I mean, there are a lot of guys that I think if you could get them back, you would love to have them. How many of them are going to want to return? They probably have to make some decisions about what their future looks like, their NFL potential, and all those kinds of things. But I would guess that Pat Narduzzi and most Power 5 head coaches would say anybody who wants to come back can come back. It's just a question of how many of those guys want to return. TRR follows up and says, am I crazy thinking that with the injuries and the opt-outs, the defense can be pretty good next season, especially if Campbell, Hamlin, and Pinnock come back? I would really look at Damari Mathis too. I mean, I think if you could get Damari Mathis back, you're going to have that's going to be big, because I mean that's an area where they are lacking. Cornerback, they were lacking in that experience depth coming into this season with Damari Mathis getting hurt. Marquez Williams has gotten a ton of extra playing time this year that he might not have otherwise had. And so that's been big. They've gotten AJ Woods out there more in the last couple of weeks. That's been big as well. If you could somehow get Damari Mathis to come back next year and Jason Pinnock, in addition to those younger players who are seeing more playing time right now, cornerback depth, I think, would look a lot better in 2021, maybe even than it did entering 2020. Safety is sort of the same thing. I mean, if you could get Damar Hamlin to come back, that would be huge, no question. But one of the, if you're going to look for upsides in the Paris Ford news, getting Brandon Hill on the field a lot more for the final 4 games, potentially 5 if they play a bowl game, that's going to be big for him in 2021. Brandon Hill really doesn't have much in the way of meaningful experience. He took over for Ford 2 weeks ago, I guess it was, in the Notre Dame game, really starting in the third quarter all the way through the fourth. But that was, he hasn't gotten a ton of meaningful experience this season, meaningful snaps. With Paris Ford out, Brandon Hill, is going to be the guy at that boundary safety spot. He's going to be right in the middle of it because that's an active position. That's a position that it's right in, up in the box, playing in the run defense, playing on the short side of the field. That's a key spot in this defense. It's a productive spot in this defense. When you look at Paris Ford having 97 tackles last year, 45 this year, that's the spot that Jordan Whitehead was playing when he had 100 and some tackles as a freshman in 2015. If you're talented, if you read your keys and you play the position right and you're a good tackler, you can really be productive playing that boundary safety position. And Brandon Hill, people might forget, but in that 2019 class, he was sort of one of the sneaky big-time gets in the class. I think he ended up as a 3-star prospect, but you watch his film, you look at his offer sheet, he was a 4-star. He had a lot of 4-star attributes, I think. And so I think he was a player that a lot of people were really excited about having in that recruiting class. And I think we've kind of forgotten about him because the safety play, you had DeMar Hamlin and Paris Ford last year, and Brandon Hill redshirted. And they came into this year, you had Hamlin back and Ford back, and Hill was sort of just behind those guys. He kind of fell out of sight, out of mind. Well, we're going to see what he can do. And I think I'm going to be really interested to see. It's not going to be perfect, of course. It's a guy getting meaningful snaps really for the first time in his career. But I'm really intrigued to see how he plays. And this playing time over the final 4 or 5 games is going to be huge for Brandon Hill entering next season, when he definitely will be a starter and the lead guy at that boundary safety spot. So I think it's going to be big for him. Eric Hallett will continue to get reps. If they don't have DeMar Hamlin back next year, they're going to get a lot of work for Eric Hallett this year. He's already gotten a lot of work playing in the Delta package as an extra safety, and then also replacing Hamlin from time to time. So he's going to have experience going into next year. And I think, depending on how those guys play over the remainder of this season, you might end up feeling pretty good about your safety position next season with Brandon Hill and Eric Hallett. Obviously, the depth on the defensive line is really good. It'll be interesting to see if any of those guys like Weaver or Jones or Camp would decide to come back. I would guess the 2 ends, Weaver and Jones, would not come back. Keyshawn Camp, though, I can't imagine that he has enough film to really justify going to the NFL. If he has an opportunity to come back to college, play another year, and put more on tape to show what he can do, I would think, there's a real opportunity for him. And so if you could get him back with some of the depth they have on the defensive line, I think you feel good about that spot. You've got young linebackers. If Phil Campbell were to come back, assuming Cam Bright doesn't try to go to the NFL or anything like that, you've got Wendell Davis, who is your starter at middle linebacker to begin the season. I think you really, the defense might not be as good as it was last year, or it was as good as it has been this year or last year, but I think it could still be a pretty good defense, maybe even a really good defense as those players develop. So, no, to your question, no, I don't think the defense can be pretty good next. I don't think you're crazy for thinking the defense can be pretty good next year. But that's what I think. I think what you think. We'll see if our opinions are on point or not. Jason Martell says, with the Notre Dame game as a blowout, the coaches missed an opportunity to get Bevel or Patty some snaps. Not giving up on Yellen, but it was a rough day for him, and they learned nothing about Bevel. Bevel, you're right. They only gave him 1 series. He only played 5 snaps. I think he dropped back to pass 3 times. He got sacked once. He scrambled once, and he threw the ball, bad pass on 3rd down. And that was it for him. He only got 1 series. And then they went to Nick Patty the rest of the day. Patty got a lot of playing time, got a bunch of snaps out there. I don't understand why you don't get more playing time for Bevel. He played 1 series in the Miami game. Looked like it was a pre-planned thing, and he didn't do anything to impress the coaches. I think that was another short drive. They took him out and went back to Joey Yellen. And in Yellen's defense, he played well at Miami. But I think at some point you got to see what you have in Bevel, and if getting destroyed by Notre Dame was not a good opportunity, a good time to find out what Bevel can do, to see a little bit more of him, I'm not really sure when is going to be a good time. I guess a blowout win, but when are those happening? Those don't happen. So I want to see what Davis Bevel can do. I would think the coaches would want to see what he can do in a game. I guess they see him in practice all the time, so they have some idea of what he can do, but I don't know. I don't know. I don't know why he didn't get more playing time in the Notre Dame game. It didn't make any sense to me. I got distracted there because Lucky Cheaper says, since pro set offenses in college football are just about obsolete, will Narduzzi finally get an offensive coordinator with a passing spread offense next year? And yeah, I mean, what? All they've done is throw the ball over the last 20 games. All Mark Whipple has done is throw the ball. He is a passing coordinator. They don't go under center. They don't run in the I formation. They do a little bit, and it doesn't do anything. They don't have any success. They can't run the ball at all. This is the biggest problem with this offense right now, and it has been for the last 20 games. They can't run the ball. To save their lives, they can't run the ball. They can't run it out of the I formation. They can't run it in power. They can't run it when they're in the shotgun. They can't run it on zone plays or anything. They're not a good running team, and they haven't been since Mark Whipple came in. And maybe that has to do with Mark Whipple versus Sean Watson. Maybe it's the different players on the offensive line. Connor Dintino and Mike Herndon on that 2018 line, and Stefano Millen and Alex Buchser, as opposed to the guys that they have out there now with Carter Warren and Gabe Hoy and Jake Cradle and Bryce Hargrove. I don't know. But they can't run to save their lives. They need to be better at sort of a pro set offense. They need to have less of a bent on passing, And Mark Whipple was hired to improve the passing game. I mean, that's why he was hired. The passing game wasn't good enough in 2018. It held the team back. It cost them wins. And so Pat Narduzzi fired Sean Watson and went out to find somebody to improve the passing game and develop the quarterbacks. And I think Kenny Pickett has gotten better in the last 20 games than he was in 2018. I think Mark Whipple has achieved that goal. I think he's helped Kenny Pickett improve. He's also made the passing game more productive, but they've thrown the ball 3,000 times over the last 2 seasons. It's more productive simply as a matter of volume. They're throwing more passes. In terms of yards per attempt and sort of general effectiveness stats and metrics, the passing game was better in 2018 for as ineffective as it was. They don't need an offensive coordinator with a passing spread offense or an offensive coordinator who only runs the ball. They need a good offensive coordinator who can call a balanced offense and design a balanced offense. And they don't have that right now. And they didn't have it 2 years ago either. Kind of had it with Matt Cavanaugh. He does a lot of interesting things. More or less had it with Jim Chaney. They haven't had it for the last 4 seasons, counting this one. Let's see. Dale Gribble says, after seeing the coaches give up on the team during the Miami game, I would leave too. The Miami game, Dale? When did they give up during the Miami game? I don't remember that. You want to talk about the end of the first half in the Notre Dame game? Okay. But I don't know about the Miami game. Let's see here. RJ Seaman 38 jumping in with the contribution to the podcast. I appreciate it. That throwing a little bit in there as a super chatter. If you got something to say, we'll definitely get your comments in there. But I appreciate all the support for sure. Let's see here. Matt Durney says, will the trend be now in future seasons that NFL prospects quit mid-season on bad teams? I believe yes. I don't know. I feel like for all but like the very, very top of the elite NFL prospects, there's still value in having more film and showing on film what you can do. Unless you're a guy, like a Trevor Lawrence, or maybe even a Justin Fields, although you look at what Justin Fields is doing just through a couple of games at Ohio State this year, and he's already, I think, improved his draft stock. I feel like most guys are going to keep playing. I don't think you're going to see a lot of guys quitting in the middle of the season. You might see more guys, and I mean, this is a trend that we've been on for a few years now of sort of opting out of the bowl game. That's not new. We've seen that happen, and it continues to, those numbers continue to increase, but I don't think we'll see some rush of guys, NFL prospects, quitting mid-season. What we might see more of is these mid-year transfers, mid-season, guys entering the transfer portal, which I still think, if I was advising players, I would say, well, at least finish the season and then go into the portal after the season. You never know what might happen, and just wait. Do it in December. Do it in January. But, I mean, we've seen a lot of those numbers, more than guys just straight up leaving their teams or quitting or opting out, whatever you want to call it, in the middle of the season like this. Dale Gribble says he's just waiting for Larry Fitzgerald to retire and coach Pitt to a national championship. I can dream, right? Yeah, you always see that, where the superstar player then goes and becomes a coach and has a lot of success. right? A lot of examples of that. I mean, you don't see that happen very often. And I don't know why Larry Fitzgerald would go into coaching. He's done plenty well in the NFL. I'm sure he's got business interests he could pursue when he finally retires. I don't see him becoming a coach at Pitt or anywhere, but that's just me. Let's see here. Eric Rogers asks, do you look for some major changes on the offensive coaching staff? Offensive coordinator, tight end, O-line, and running backs coach needs to go. Powell hasn't recruited a good back since Hall and Olsen. Yeah, I mean, I think there will be changes in the offseason. And I think there will be changes on the offensive side of the ball. I don't know who it's going to be, but here's what I've said, all right? And I've said this in previous weeks. I've written it on Panther-Lair.com that I'm not the type that I'm going to sit down and say, this guy needs to be fired, that guy needs to be fired. I don't like taking that approach. I don't like saying that people should lose their jobs. But what I will say is this, okay? You look at the numbers from what Pitt's offense was in 2 seasons under Sean Watson, and those numbers got Sean Watson fired. Okay? At the end of 2 seasons, Sean Watson was fired for the performance of Pitt's offense. You look at those numbers from those 26 games, 2017 to 2018, and compare them to Pitt's offensive numbers from the last 20 games, 2019 season and 7 games so far in 2020. And the numbers from the last 2 seasons, from 2019 and 20, are worse than the numbers that got Sean Watson fired. I don't know what Pat Narduzzi's going to do. He hasn't told me what he's going to do this offseason. But I can look at the numbers and I can say, well, one guy got fired with worse numbers than this. Or with better, one guy got fired with better numbers than this. Yeah, I think there'll be some changes on the offensive side of the ball. And there probably should be. I mean, look, when your offense performs like this, there should be changes. I'm not going to say this guy should be fired or that guy should be fired, but I mean, you look at what's holding this team back. You look at the weakness of this team. It's the offense. You need to fix that. If you're Pat Narduzzi, it's getting to the point where your job is going to start riding on it, and it already is. RJC Man 38, one of our super chatters, says the coaching won't get better. So if Pitt loses Saturday, how doesn't Mark Whipple's seat get hotter? I mean, I would have to think it's pretty hot right now already, right? I mean, I don't know if it needs to get much hotter. I don't know if it's going to get much hotter, but I think it's, I think it's pretty hot. Let's see. Leon Moore 23 is ready for hoops. Free Nike, he says. Has to be soon, right? Any word? No word on Nike Smonday. And whether he's going to get a waiver from the NCAA, as of Tuesday night, still hasn't been anything new. And it doesn't look like there's going to be anything new. It doesn't look like he's going to be eligible this year. It looks like for whatever reason, the Miami of Ohio didn't want him to be eligible. For whatever reason, they didn't support his, waiver claim or his waiver appeal to the NCAA to try and get eligible to play this year. Their lack of support doomed his chances, and I don't think they have a really good reason for it. I've read different things about it, but it sure seems like, that was the big reason his appeal was, his waiver was denied, and it doesn't seem like it's going to get overturned. Leon also asks, who do you think will be the most valuable on the hoops team that is new? I mean, I think John Hughley is going to play. I think he's going to be a big part of, I think he's going to be a big part of the offense. Sorry, I was reading a different question about Pitt's offensive players on the football team. But, John Hughley seems like he's going to help. Playing at the center position, probably not as a starter. He's going to work in a rotation with, your Terrell Brown, your Kareem Abdul-Koulibaly. But I think he's got a potential to play as a freshman and contribute as a freshman and potentially help them and be a positive addition to the rotation. It'll be interesting to see what he does. I think you're still going to be relying on Xavier Johnson and Justin Champagnie and Audice Toney. Getting Ethiel Horton eligible is, maybe that's actually the guy. If you want to talk about new players, he's been around for a year, but he didn't play last year after sitting out due to a transfer himself. But I think he's going to, probably have the most impact of anybody who wasn't on the team or wasn't on the court with Pitt last year. So Horton would probably be the guy, and then Hughley, I think, is going to contribute as well. Let's see here. So we scroll through questions about the running backs. I know Pitt fans don't like Vincent Davis because he's smaller. The coaches feel like he's their best option. I don't know what it is about Todd Sibley that they don't like. But they gave him the starting assignment at Miami, gave him a few carries, and he went out and, did pretty well with them. Then he didn't really get many carries the rest of the game, and he got hurt in the week between games, between Miami and Notre Dame, and didn't play against Notre Dame. So who knows what the running back depth chart is really going to look like for this game at Florida State on Saturday. Who knows what it's going to actually look like, through the week, and then who's actually going to get the snaps and play. Vincent Davis has far and away been their number one running back in terms of snaps, carries, targets, all those things. I mean, he's gotten more work than anybody else on the team, for better or for worse. I still think there's a bright future for Izzy Abanikanda. I think he can be a really good player. I think he's shown a few flashes this year. I think he needs to get better in pass protection. That seems to be the biggest thing holding him back. But, and I like Daniel Carter's potential as well as a big back. I like the guys they have coming in. Rodney Hammond and Malik Newton. I think those guys will be good. But it's just not working right now, and you need to block. I mean, that's the biggest thing. I mean, you give, Vincent Davis some bigger holes to run through, and maybe he can make a few more things happen. But anyway, all right, we're going to wrap up the election night show here. Like I said, Home Field Apparel. You need to go to their website, homefieldapparel.com. You can get their great Pitt gear. They have a great Pitt collection. Go check their stuff out. It's high-quality products. It's really soft T-shirts, great designs. Definitely go look for them. And make sure you check out our website, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. It's the most comprehensive source of Pitt sports news on the internet. Football, basketball, recruiting, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. You can get all the coverage there. You can, find out everything going on in the world of Pitt sports, as we've obviously had a lot of conversation on the message boards about, Paris Ford's departure and what's been happening with that situation and how they're going to move forward. So, when something happens in the world of Pitt sports, you can go to the Panther-Lair.com message boards and talk about it with hundreds and thousands of your closest Pitt fan friends. Of course, Saturday mornings, 8 a.m. on 93.7 The Fan, we have the Panthers Insider Show, so make sure you tune in for that. And thanks for coming in tonight, on Tuesday night at 8:30 for this live stream. We really appreciate everybody who jumped into the chat. That was always fun. We enjoy those conversations and, of course, listen to the podcast throughout the week. We'll be back again next Tuesday night at 8:30 to talk about this Pitt-Florida State game on Saturday. I think the Panthers got a real chance to win, a good chance to win. They just have to not be terrible. Don't shoot themselves in the foot too many times. And I think they got a chance to beat the Seminoles and break their losing streak and maybe start a little winning streak of their own. So we'll see what happens on Saturday, and we'll be talking about it all weekend on Panther-Lair.com and right back here next Tuesday night at 8:30. So we'll see you then. Have a great rest of the week. Enjoy the game on Saturday. Enjoy the weekend. We will talk to you next Tuesday night. Thanks a lot.